What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on Unique Access Entertainment. As always, please hit that subscribe button. It's right down there, it's free. Enables us to keep coming to y'all as often as possible with as many interviews as possible. Now, today, we have the honor and privilege of being joined by BG Knockout. Thanks for coming through, sir.
What's up, brother? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. It's an honor and a privilege. Been wanting to interview you for a long time, so glad we're making it happen.
Thank
One of the early things, I was first introduced to your music and who you were through Eazy-E, but before we get to actually the music,
you. Mhm.
like as growing up, being in LA, being in Compton, being in Watts, like what did Eazy-E particularly like Boys in the Hood, radio, Eazy-Duz-It, all that stuff, in particular Eazy-E, what did that mean to you as a kid growing up?
Bro, it meant everything to me because, before Easy, I ever heard of him, we had Mixmaster Spade. Mixmaster Spade, Toddy T, these guys, then King T came up under them. But Mixmaster Spade mother lived in my neighborhood. So I used to see him jamming in his mother's garage. You know what I'm saying? He would have the garage up, the turntables out, music blasting. And the first time I think I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, bro, when I walked by one day when he was doing his little DJ thing in the garage. And he actually allowed me to grab the microphone. I didn't know what I was doing, but I grabbed the microphone and tried to say a little rap or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So this is back in the mid 80s, like 87, 86, something like that. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So King T came around, he came to Compton around 87, 88, I think. And he moved directly into my neighborhood, right across the street from some of my best friends. You know what I mean? So, and then by then we kind of knew because of Mixmaster Spade, about rap and all this different stuff. And so Easy comes out around what 88 with Boyz-N-The, 87, I think, when it was just local. It wasn't because it came
87,
out
yeah.
locally before, he came out with a record deal. So naturally around Compton, at the Compton swap meet, used to have OG Daddy V, right? He used to be there with a van and he used to sell these tapes. And back then, the tapes that, he would sell like mixtapes like they started doing later on. Back then, he would put this high reverb on all the tapes.
Hmm.
So it sounded good like when you played it like in a lowrider or something like that, like an old school car. So my uncles and them, naturally they were older. They would buy the tapes and I would just hear the music around the house while they're in their lowriders and stuff like that. So that's how I got familiar with Eazy-E initially from Boyz-N-The. Around, it had to
Okay.
be like 87. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then let's take it back then, because with Mixmaster Spade and Toddy T, in particular, even before we get to King T, with Mixmaster Spade kind of having the sing-songy style,
Yeah.
and then Toddy T with Batter Ram and doing songs about drug dealing and all, or
Yeah.
doing drugs and all that type of stuff, um, coming out of the electro hop and kind of the Egyptian lover-esque type of music that was going on.
Yeah.
What did you, what appealed to you about what Mixmaster Spade and Toddy T were doing as early? Because even Ice T, of course, was
Yeah. I
also
see. Yeah.
was before all of that, but he
Yeah.
was also doing more
He
hip
was
hop.
doing he was doing the electro hop too. Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
too. But that being said, uh, especially Bataram in particular, that really changed the thing. Even though the sound, I don't think really changed till 6 in the morning. And better bring a gun, better have a gun.
Yeah.
But what was it about that that was different or was appealing or
I
caught
think
you?
I think the thing for me was that, the things he rapped about was right inside of my home. You know what I mean? Gray hair granny smoking drugs. That was my grandmother. You know what I'm saying? The guy Cheese Man, he was like, Cheese Man, you talk dope the best. Cheese Man is my OG homie from my neighborhood. He had
Wow.
Rolls Royces, Mercedes. He had cars that none of us could afford. You know what I'm saying? Because he was a big drug dealer. You know what I mean? So all those things combined, and then just having access to these guys like Mixmaster Spade had. He had these old Blazers, these old school Blazers. I don't know like what year they was, but they didn't have a top on them. Like they was topless like Jeeps. And he used
Oh
to have
wow.
dudes sitting in the back, you know what I'm saying? Him and the two guys sitting in the front, the passenger. And then these other two dudes would be behind them some kind of way. And then the music is just, in the summertime, he's coming through Compton loud, you know what I'm saying, with this big old blazer just bumping. So I think for me, just as a kid, just watching that, I was just amazed. Like, damn. I was like, one day, you know what I'm saying? One day, one day I think that's gonna be me, you know. So I think it was so close to me that that's why it registered with me the most, you know.
And could you tell or feel the difference going from the early electro hop iced tea days to the Mixmaster Spades to the Toddy
Yeah, when
T?
I in hindsight I can, but you know, like back then I wasn't paying that close attention. I wasn't like looking like, oh, so music has changed. I wasn't thinking about it in that way because back then, you know, you got to think like the Zulu Nation and all those people, all the stuff that they was putting out. You know, we used to listen to Double Dutch Bus, all this music to us, all blended together perfectly. It didn't matter that, you know what I'm saying? That, you know, one day gangster rap came and then I don't know. I never like really saw it really change, to be honest with you. It was just all the same to me. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you say that because I do remember I'm from Maryland, but just growing up and listening to music,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like what you're saying. If it was rap, it was rap.
It was rap.
I didn't think of it in all these different categories and stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't until a little later when I noticed more so through my friends and a little bit in the magazines that I would start to be reading that I'd noticed like West Coast rap or street rap
Yeah.
or all
See, I
that.
never, you know, as a little kid watching Yo MTV Raps, bro, in the mid '80s, late '80s, whatever. You know, everybody that came from whatever region that they came from, we didn't discriminate with the sound or who was who and where you was from. All that shit was dope. You know what I'm saying? Like we took it all as like if it was dope, we was fucking with it. You know what I'm saying? It didn't matter where you came from. So I think that all came in the '90s when people was trying to categorize, you know, gangster rap, backpack rap. You know what I'm saying? All this different type of thing. But I liked it all as one thing. You know what I mean? I didn't really see a difference.
Well, I agree. I also wonder though if uh in reality I also wonder if because New York really started losing grip on control of it
That
that
could be
they put all the labels on it because even back in the day before the West Coast rose, like Curtis Blow and the Fat Boys and Run DMC, they're three totally different artists,
absolutely.
but they didn't label them as, oh, the Fat Boys are pop
Yeah,
rap and
exactly.
Curtis Blow's that, like they didn't do that. They
Exactly.
were just rap.
Yeah, you know, those guys were like really extremists. You know, they were really extreme about them holding on to, you know, we the originators of this thing. Because I used to hear that even before I got into music. I used to just hear it through the grapevine or either through magazines, like even through King T. You know, King T was kind of fortunate to be accepted over there. You know what I'm saying? But King T was very versatile as well. Like he wasn't one dimensional. You know what I mean? Like King T had bass. You know what I'm saying? He had songs that were out of the box when it comes to so quote unquote gangster rap too. You know what I mean?
Well, shout out to King T. I've interviewed him on the channel. There's a link for that. He's one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, sure.
And thankfully, I've gotten to know him a lot over the years, spent a lot of time with him. And he's the first one that ever took me to the Shaw. So
Okay.
shout out to King
For
T
sure, for sure.
back in
Yeah.
the 90s. But the thing about it is, I just always thought it was interesting as these different waves of the West Coast started happening because it didn't start with 6 in the Morning or even Boys in the Hood that some people think. There was all this music before,
Yeah.
but when Compton really exploded, it had been building through Mixmaster Spade, Toddy T, and King T to where
Absolutely.
when Eazy came, I'm not saying that he wouldn't have blown up anyway, but it was at least a familiarity with artists from Compton already.
Absolutely.
So that
Absolutely.
so that being said, then when you hear, because I remember Eazy-Duz-It was probably at the time my favorite album when it came out, and because I thought, as somebody that likes to laugh,
Yeah.
I thought the album was hilarious, but I also was super hardcore gangster at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like Too Short did with Life Is Too Short, he had some songs that had no cussing on it, and then some songs obviously that were super cussing.
Right.
So,
Right.
and back then I also just looked at it as songs. I didn't
Right.
really think about that right out the gate. But for you, did hearing, because starting really with Schoolie D and then Ice T was 6 in the Morning and then
Mm-hmm.
Boys in the Hood, did it hit you ever like all the profanity that started coming in as a kid or as a fan or not really?
No, man, it was just like I said, I was so used to that language because, like I have uncles who are like we're like not really close in age, but they're not that much older than me. But they were like adults young, you know what I'm saying? Like my uncles dropped out of junior high school. You know what I mean? Like so they were kind of young and I was just, being hanging around them and being around older people. All of that language was familiar to me. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like for some people it was a shock like they're talking like that on the record like no. You know what I mean. I heard that in my house every day. So when Schoolie D came out, that was another one sometimes we tend to forget about. But yeah, like Schoolie D had that impact on us as well. Like we used to have his little, what was the small records that they used to make?
Oh, 45s?
45s. Yeah, we had like those of him and stuff like that. And then Ice T came a little bit behind him with the same kind of cadence. You know what I'm saying? Now it's crazy that he said that he kind of piggybacked off the cadence from that because you can hear it now like it ain't nothing.
Oh yeah, for
But back
sure.
then, I didn't put it together. You know what I mean? It was just like maybe that's how everybody's, that's how the new style is coming, that people is just rapping in this tone. You know what I mean? But yeah, all of those things, man, it was just so familiar to me. And then, like, once I ended up going to foster care around 1985. And once they took me out of Compton, I think that was like, being so young, you know what I'm saying? Being snatched away from your home so young and thrown in, and taken into a whole nother environment, it kind of made me, it kind of had me kind of nostalgic. So I'm like, damn. So everything that was related to back home, I was gravitating towards while I was away from home. So now my brother Dresta, he went to youth authority around that time as well, or a little bit later. But anyhow, now he's all into it. He's older than me. You know what I mean? So he's rapping while he's in youth authority. So he's writing me letters in the form of raps. And then, I'm kind of getting excited. So this is the way that we're bonding while we're away from each other. And so now it's becoming a thing for me. You know what I mean? So now I'm buying all the tapes that I can, you know what I'm saying, while I'm in juvenile, while I'm in placement, because in placement, they used to give us like a little stipend. You can get a job, you can work for money and stuff like that. And then they would take us on an outing. They would take us to record stores and things
Oh
like
wow.
that. So, yeah, so we can buy radios and buy music. So now, it's a thing for me now. Now it's becoming me. You know what I mean? So like around, I think when I was about 11 years old, 1987, maybe like early 87, late 87, early 88, I started writing my first lyrics. You know what I'm saying? And NWA, who was now, Eazy-Duz-It is out, Straight Out of Compton is out. They're my focal point. You know what I mean? These are my heroes now. So I studied them guys to a T. You know what I mean? I can recite any of their music from frontwards to backwards. You know what I mean?